Malaysia was also one of the very first countries that went through its NBSAP process and integrated the Global Biodiversity Framework. You have a national policy on biological diversity, which is 2022-2030. Can you tell us a little bit more about this process and how you promoted business engagement? But I'm particularly curious, has business remained engaged in actually putting it in practice? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as Malaysia is concerned, we are, as a size, we are a small country, but in terms of biodiversity, we are mega diverse. We have one of the oldest forests in the world, a quarter of all the animal species, and we are also on the coral triangle. So for Malaysia, we have a huge responsibility to the planet, and we have obviously, as mentioned in our NBSAP and our national biodiversity policy, put a very ambitious goal with regards to how we can coexist and protect our natural resources. The businesses, they play a big role because they also find that the changing realities of today, things like obviously climate change, floods, heat waves, we experience haze in Malaysia, but also human-wildlife conflict is getting more and more serious as a result of development. So a lot of the bigger companies, they've been able to put more attention toward conservation, to put more resources, obviously. The challenge remains for, I think as mentioned by another speaker just now, it's for the smaller companies, those that I like to describe as those who can't afford to have chief sustainability officers. And a lot of new rulings that come in can be very technical, and I think that is where one is the job of the government, but we also work with the big businesses in Malaysia so that they can talk to those in their supply chain for these companies to understand that today there has to be a wider consideration in terms of how we go about doing our businesses. We have seen examples. Malaysia also has one of the largest palm oil plantations in the world, which attracts us a lot of scrutiny. But the reality is that now they are all part of the sustainable palm oil certification. But most importantly, there are more nature-positive actions that they take. For example, allowing wildlife corridors. Well, cited one is in Malaysian Borneo, in Sabah, which allows the pygmy elephants there, which were previously not only finding it difficult to travel, but they damage the palm oil crops. And this creates anger between the communities that are dependent on the crops and can create conflict. So with this corridor in place, it allows these pygmy elephants to pass through. I think they've done a lot of things with orangutans as well. And we also, on the peninsula, we have issues with elephants, tigers, and all that. And so we want to create these corridors to allow our natural resources, wild animals, to be able to thrive. I think as a result, today the challenge is that we have the NBSAP. Putting it into implementation is not easy. We recognize that. And funding, government, we have increased enormously our ecological fiscal transfers. We have worked with the indigenous people to have community rangers to protect our wildlife. But we realize that there is a limit, obviously, of what government can do. So what we are trying to work with our corporations is to get them to invest as well, so that it can be even more effective, because not just the federal government or the local governments acting alone, but also to get the big corporates to play their role. We have seen actions in some places, but I think we need to scale up more. And I think I like what the previous session speaker said about how nature, it's easier to inspire people with nature compared with, things like decarbonization. And I think that has had a huge impact in getting interest. And I think that is one way, whether we like it or not, for corporates, when they see that there's a lot of interest from the public, they would want to put more resources there as well.